So ocular migraines are less common than regular migraines. Definition of it is ischemia or vascular spasm in or behind the affected eye. It's typically one eye, and it can come with or without pain. It's temporary. Temporary meaning it usually lasts for a few minutes till sometimes 60 minutes, but it's usually like 40 minutes. It's not really an eye issue under the specifications. It's a brain issue. And same thing with regular migraines. They say that, okay, it's blocking the flow of blood to your brain. Okay, it's dilated instead of constricted. Okay, they don't know. Okay? I think the reason that I can't figure that out is because there's so many triggers and everybody has different things. So it's kind of like Marfan's, if you will. And it's actually pretty common in Marfan's, not ocular per se, but migraines in general. Because they just don't know, right? So the difference between the ocular and the regular migraine, like I said, they don't always come with pain. That's a really big one. If they are followed by pain, then it's called a migraine aura. So 20% of people that have migraines have auras. And I guess while you're having it, you don't know what it is until it goes away and you see if there's pain or not. If you've never had a real migraine, then likely it's probably the ocular. Because generally, you've probably had a migraine by now if you're going to have one. Now, that's not in every case, but generally you have. So with the ocular, you get flashing and shimmering lights, a blind spot in your central vision, and then zigzag lines or stars. And it starts out in your central vision. It starts out usually with the blind spot, and then it kind of expands into almost like a tunnel vision situation to where your effects are around, but they're not direct. And then it eventually goes out of your line of sight and you're good. So, different than ocular, regular migraines are associated with, they're still called auras, but they're not just visual disturbances. There's smell, there's tingling in like your face and your extremities. What else? Sound. You become really sensitive to that, and light, and there's something else that I'm not sure. I can't remember the other one. Hearing, maybe. So it's possible to have a regular migraine and an ocular migraine at the same time. Now, to me, that makes very little sense, because wouldn't it just be a migraine? Or a migraine with aura? I don't know. I guess maybe you're still seeing the auras while you're hurting? Maybe? I don't know. 70% of migraines in general are inherited. And they're usually inherited from the mom. Now, that's not a huge surprise, because the ratio for women to men having them, every 3 women to every 1 male. So it's kind of not a surprise that it comes from the mom, right? 1 in 200 people have the ocular migraine. And that's because it's just, now, migraines, I guess, they're not noted as much as people have them, because they call them a headache, or people misrepresent them and say that they're a migraine and they're not. So the statistics aren't really true, if you will. But the ocular migraines are even less common. Like, I've had migraines since I was a kid, and I've never had an ocular migraine. I've also never had auras. So, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But the ocular usually requires no treatment. And that's because it's not as common. It's not necessarily a syndrome. It's usually gone within 30 minutes, and you don't have pain. You can have pain, but you don't usually. So, of course, with regular migraines, and it applies to any type of headache or health condition really in general, because like interstitial cystitis, they also suggest this, but they say to make a food and activity log to see what your triggers are. So basically, like, okay, if you had cucumber, mushrooms, soda, chicken, lunch meat, and then tomorrow you have a migraine, you're like, okay, well, it could be one of those that are a trigger. Now, that being said, you could have a million triggers. So it's not surefire, but it can help narrow down some things that you just absolutely need to stay away from. Like some people, it's chocolate. So they know, okay, if I eat chocolate, I'm going to sacrifice and have a migraine tomorrow. And it's a conscious decision at that point almost. So I did the activity and food log, and I even went as far as like when I had periods, or what I felt like that day, or what the weather was like that day. And there was none. There was no triggers for me. There was nothing that I could say, okay, every time I walk around the block 5 times, I get a migraine. No, like, I wouldn't say it was pointless, but it was a lot of work with no help. And I did that along with a calendar that I had, what exactly was happening when I was having the migraine. How many times did I throw up? What did I take as medicine? How long did it last? Things like that. And so that actually became more important because I took that with me to the neurologist, and he was like, okay, so you're having them 17 times a month, instead of saying, I think I have them like 3 or 4 times a week. I had it down, okay? It still really didn't do anything, but it's worth a shot, and it's very likely to work for you. I'm just a tough case, so I'm saying try it if you haven't already. So excuse me, triggers that, like I said, they can be different for everybody. So I've just kind of made a tentative list, and I would bet good money that you could come up with at least 3 that aren't on my list that you have issues with. So I'm just going to list them off to you. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sorry. Contact overuse, meaning like if you sleep in your contacts too much, or you're not. Okay, let me walk in. Apparently my internet connection is not agreeing with my beautiful day. So let me get resituated here. Okay, sorry about that. So contact hygiene, use, maintenance, all of that. Even actually, if you have the improper fitting, that can actually make a big difference too. Incorrect prescription, that could be either your glasses or your contacts, or both even. But of course you need to go to the eye doctor. And if you haven't heard me say that yet. So what else? Cigarette smoke, red wine. It's alcohol in general, but red wine has more nitrates in it, so it's typically more common. Nitrates are also in smoked meat. Artificial sweeteners, emotional stress, or just stress in general. Glaring, flickering, fluorescent, or bright lights. That's a huge one for me. Lights kill me. And actually, sensitivity to light while I'm here is called photophobia. Dehydration, eye fatigue or eye strain, weather change. That one really has never made sense to me, but I guess I'm not too much of a science geek. But it's something about the bariatric pressure, and I don't really know how you're supposed to figure that out, but I guess if it rains, you're more likely, or something like that. Hormone changes, so that's anything from PMS, menstrual, or menopause. And actually, menopause, it's supposed to go away if it's ever going away. Now, when I was a kid, they would say, oh, okay, well, it's going to go away. Because I had them since, I can remember. It's going to go away when you hit puberty. No. Okay, well, it's going to go away when you are an actual adult. Well, I'm 31. I think I'm an adult by now, and I still have them. So I guess my next landmark, well, they told me to, if you had a kid, sometimes it changes. Well, I'm not having a kid on purpose. So my next landmark is menopause. Woohoo! And that's just still, that's a hope. That's not guaranteed. Birth control can make them worse, but birth control can also help because it helps the hormonal stuff. So they don't say that it helps, but it can. Dairy, certain medicines, exercise, and sexual activity both play a role. Aged cheese, low blood sugar, high altitude. So like, especially if you're, I've never flown, but I imagine that your ears pop the entire time, just like if you're going over the mountains here in West Virginia. And that, if you keep doing that, it hurts. So if you go from here in Charleston to Morgantown, you usually have a headache by then if you have that type of trigger. It's a lot of mountains. That's why we're the mountain state. Lack of sleep, sometimes even too much sleep. Perfume or other strong odors, maybe onions or things like that. MSGs, nitrates, caffeine, that could be too much or a lack of, and chocolate. I bet you can come up with 3 more to tell me, just because they're all different for all of us, right? Same thing with treatment. So for treatment, I listed several, but everybody's different. Some people can use Imitrex and it's a miracle drug. Well, that didn't work for me. Some people can use antidepressants and it's a miracle drug. Nope, didn't work. The only thing that there's 2 things I've not tried. The Daith, the piercing right here, I think it's called Daith is how you pronounce it, and Botox. And Botox just frightens me, and I just don't like the idea of that. So that'll probably be one that I won't try just because. So the ones that I have listed are medicines, either prescription or over the counter. So a lot of people can take Excedrin migraine and be gravy. I've never been able to do that. But if you can, that's amazing because you don't have to keep loading up your system with all of these stronger drugs. I said Botox, chiropractic care. I'm going to do a live with my chiropractor hopefully here soon, so we'll definitely touch on that. Massage, that could be either your temples or your eyes or the back of your neck or whatever, wherever you're having the pain. Dark rooms, caffeine, laying down, hydration, meditation, tinted lenses, and those are for like, not necessarily outside, but like fluorescent lights, or like right now, the light's shining in a different way, so it's actually hurting my eyes. Sleep, and a damp towel, or I use ice. I'm all about ice for everywhere, so obviously I use ice. And like I told you, I put pressure right here. I used to do with just my hand, but now I put an ice pack right there and roll over to where I have that compressed into my eye, into my eyeball, a lot harder than I should. So that is my go-to. It's not good, I don't recommend it, but that's what I do. Those things that I mentioned, they lead to risks, like over-the-counter NSAIDs or just prescription NSAIDs. You start talking about bleeding ulcers, abdominal pain, things like that. So your liver, they're not good. So if you don't have to use them, don't use them. Medication overuse or rebound headaches. So if you remember, I had a migraine, I think it was like 8 days. I really don't remember. I tried to block it out, but that was just this month. And the reason I had that was because I've been on NSAIDs since the end of June. And I decided that, okay, it's not helping my swelling, it's not helping the hip pain, so why am I taking this and trying to increase the risk of having bleeding and all of this other stuff if it's not even helping, right? Well, I decided that I was going to go cold turkey. Well, I guess that was the wrong decision, because the next day I had a migraine and I just could not shake it. It wouldn't go away for nothing. So after, I guess it was 7 days, I don't remember. After that amount of time, I just gave up and said, you know what, I'll just try this again later, because this is absolute torture. And if you've had migraines before, you can definitely agree with me and say that it's torture. Some people only have moderate migraines. I've never met them, but apparently they're out there. Of course, there's people that say, oh man, my head hurts, I think I have a migraine. So that could be where that stat comes from. But if you have a legit migraine, I shouldn't say you're debilitated, because sometimes it's not that severe, but you know that you are just not okay today, right? You can have a persistent aura. I don't really know what you do about that, but it can lead to a stroke or bleeding in your brain. Then if you have 15 or more, it's chronic, a month. And if you have it for longer than 3 days, it's called a status migrainoso. I don't know how to say that. Prevention wise, you eat healthy, medicine, reduce estrogen, exercise, consistency, like a schedule, like sleep patterns. And then subcutaneous supraorbital nerve stimulation. So it's kind of like a TENS unit, and you put it here. I've not tried that. I didn't even know that existed until I did some more research today. So there's other types of headaches. There's cluster headaches, which are usually severe, but they don't last nearly as long as a migraine, and typically they don't come with nausea and vomiting and things like that. There's tension headaches. Usually they're mild to moderate, and they don't come with photophobia, which is light sensitivity. Phonophobia is sound sensitivity. They usually don't come with that, and they're usually bilateral. So a migraine is usually unilateral. It's usually one side. And if you have them really bad, like my doctors have told me a lot, that it's almost like having a stroke, a very mild stroke, but still you got a stroke, because your whole half of that body, at least for me, is very, very weak. Like you can tell difference in my eyes and my lids, in my face, obviously my strength, but it's compared to a stroke, which is very scary, I think, but they don't seem to think so. People with migraines, 1 in 5 have had an aura or have auras. I'm not one of those. Yes. Something I can not check on my box. That's pretty cool. Migraines are usually 4 to 72 hours. Blurred vision, lightheadedness, things like that. Other causes of headaches that aren't like the tension headaches and things like that: head injury, spinal fluid leak, withdrawal from medications, seizures. There's a lot in that list that I'm sure I just didn't write down, but there's other things that you don't have a migraine, but you're having these auras and you're having a lot of pain. So you need to go to the doctor. If you've not been diagnosed with migraines and it's not being monitored and followed, you need to go to the doctor and tell them exactly what's happening. And I do recommend that journal that I was telling you about. Okay, this is my favorite part. Not really. There's a prodome, an aura, migraine, and postdome, or migraine hangover. I don't have prodome, which is you kind of just have a general weakness. You feel cruddy a couple of days before. I guess I have them too often to get that, because I would just feel cruddy all the time. The aura is usually the visual disturbance, or your sound, or your tingling, things like that. Of course, we've went over migraines this entire episode. And postdrome, or migraine hangover, if you've had a real hangover from alcohol, it's basically that. Sometimes it's a little less severe than that, but it's pretty much that. So, if you haven't had one, you're confused, moodiness, dizziness, weakness, sound and light sensitivity, smell sensitivity, nausea, vomiting. Sometimes it's not quite that bad. Sometimes it depends on each case, honestly. But, when you say a migraine hangover, people are like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. But that's what it is. You get rid of your migraine, so you're not in that migrainous pain, but you still feel like absolute crap, right? And yeah, you may have slept for the last 2 days, but it's not recuperative sleep. So I always say it doesn't count, so I can go right back to sleep and sleep another 16, 18 hours because I didn't sleep. I just was able to close my eyes and get rid of the pain, if that makes sense. So I wanted to tell you about the neurologist that I saw at Cleveland Clinic. I was referred up there. I saw a neuro-ophthalmologist and a neurologist. And I have no idea what his name was. I don't remember. But it was like an hour-and-a-half appointment. We went over, he would name a medicine and I'd say yes or no. Well, I've tried pretty much everything, like I said, except that daith piercing and the Botox. So about halfway through, he was like, are you sure you've tried all these? And I'm like, yeah, I've had it my entire life. And I guess he started to get this feeling that maybe I was lying or something. So he brought up 2 different programs that they have there at Cleveland. One of them is to get you off of medicine. To me, it sounded like he was trying to put me in rehab, and the hardest thing that I was on was Neurontin, and I think I was down to 2 a day by then, which obviously I could get off myself because I did. So that just kind of pissed me off. And then the other one, I believe it was called Eye Match, and it was, they teach you how to cope with it, and they teach you pain management and things like that. But it wasn't inpatient, so I would have to stay up there in a hotel at my own cost, commute at my own cost every day over to the hospital, spend all day there, and then go back for a month. That's insanity to me. I obviously know how to cope with it if I've had it my entire life. Am I good at it? Not really. I mean, I think that I've told McCormick a lot here recently. I'm like, I'm actually kind of thankful for migraines because I'm used to pain. I'm used to staying in bed all day. I'm used to dealing with things and kind of figuring out a way to live with them, right? So obviously I did not do that program. I thought that it was really silly. I guess maybe if you're just now experiencing migraines or any type of other chronic pain, you could look into it. But for me, I think it's a little silly. It's, I'm sure, a great moneymaker, but I didn't appreciate it. So, basically we're talking here the difference of ocular migraine versus regular migraine. And, they'll make a big deal out of your ocular migraine, even though it's really not dangerous for the most part. Now, there's always that special case that can be, but it's as a rule not very dangerous. And you generally don't have pain. So if they try to put you on stuff for that, I would just tell them to keep it because you don't need it. Take an Advil because it's going to be over in a half an hour, right? I would I would pay really good money to have migraine over in half an hour. That would be amazing. So, if you have any more questions,